Petroleum is utilized every day around the world, but it is often misunderstood. Given the impact it has on the world, all must understand what petroleum is. Petroleum is a mixture of gaseous, liquid, and solid hydrocarbons, which occurs beneath the Earth's surface. The mixture tends to be thick, yellow to black, and flammable. Petroleum is also a fossil fuel. Fossil fuels are formed under layers of rock from the decomposition of dead species, which are millions of years old. Fossil fuels are controversial because they are non-renewable energy resources. Also, people oppose the burning of fossil fuels because they are responsible for nearly 75% of human-caused emissions. During the past year, 7.19 billion barrels of different petroleum products were depleted by the United States of America. Let's try and understand how petroleum products are produced.
From the outside, a refinery might look like an endless maze of pipes, chimney stacks, steel columns, and vessels. The fact is that oil refineries are highly sophisticated industrial facilities, transforming crude oil into valuable products used in a myriad of applications. The process starts when crude oil, extracted from the ground and transported by ship or pipeline, arrives at the refinery. Crude oil is first heated at various temperatures in an atmospheric distillation unit to separate it into different fractions. In simpler refineries, the resulting components are further processed to remove impurities such as sulfur and modify their physical or chemical properties to make them suitable for incorporation into final products. Then the blending comes in, mixing in different components and additives to prepare the finished products that are familiar to us all, such as LPG, gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. The finished products are stored in large tank farms ready to be transported to the end users via a combination of pipelines, rail, road, and waterways. However, modern refineries can do much more. Most European refineries use complex processes in order to extract more high-value products from a barrel of crude oil. This generally involves vacuum distillation of the atmospheric residue, followed by cracking of the distillate, and possibly further upgrading of the vacuum residue into more light products, leaving a smaller proportion of heavy residue. This residue can itself be upgraded, ultimately producing solid coke. As a result, complex refineries, although more energy intensive, are capable of producing a larger proportion of gasoline and gas oil, making use of a larger part of the bottom of the barrel, which would otherwise end up as heavy fuel oil, for which there is today limited market demand. Modern refineries generate the light and clean products that advance society's demand, making our life more comfortable and bringing endless benefits.
Petroleum has been excessively used since ancient Egypt. Let's take a look at petroleum's history. Ancient Egyptians used a formation of petroleum, known today as bitumen, for their daily life. Whether it be for mummification, waterproofing and sealing, jewelry production, or for tools and weapons, ancient Egypt relied heavily upon petroleum. In 1849, whales were in less danger because geologists realized petroleum distillation produces lamp fuel. Prior, whale oil was the only lamp fuel used. The first oil well to be drilled in the United States was called Oil Creek in Titusville, Pennsylvania. This well sparked the commercialism of oil as it is known in the present. Nonetheless, the petroleum industry in the United States has John D. Rockefeller to thank for its major transformation. In 1870, John D. Rockefeller formed the Standard Oil Company. He concentrated on oil refinement and at one point was responsible for 90% of the oil refinement in the United States. He was the richest man in the world and notably the first billionaire. Eventually, his monopoly over oil refinement was broken down into 34 companies. Today, companies such as Chevron and ExxonMobil are formed from parts of the original trust. In 1901, Texas had an oil field produce a gusher. This is where 100,000 barrels of oil come out of the same well. Texas' population grew to the gusher and brought in new jobs for the entire town. This was the first, and clearly not the last, boomtown, where small town life revolves around oil. In 1903, the high supply of petroleum was met with even greater demand when Henry Ford produced the Model T. The Model T made gasoline a need for middle-class families who could afford the new automobile. The recognition of petroleum also rose when both world wars proved that dominance over petroleum would not only help everyday living, but the future well-being of all nations. The control over petroleum took a turn in the 1960s. The Seven Sisters was a group of companies that controlled about 85% of the petroleum industry. The power of these 7 European and American companies caused the formation of the OPEC cartel. OPEC, the Organizations of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, was formed in an effort to control matters related to petroleum output, prices, and rights. The Seven Sisters lost their influence over the industry with the rise in OPEC's power. For example, when countries in OPEC did not support Israel in the Yom Kippur War, they were able to place an embargo on all countries they exported to who had supported Israel. This caused the damaging oil crisis and recession of the 1970s. OPEC nations had used their petroleum reserves as political power. Countries within OPEC have had conflicts since, such as when Iraq and Kuwait fought due to both bordering oil wells. The problems with petroleum today result from the value of petroleum, which was established as incredibly high in the past. Currently, there are several environmental, social, and economic pressures on the use of petroleum. First, when looking at the environment, the Earth is warming and sea levels are rising. This will have a detrimental impact for future life on Earth. The combination of both rising temperatures and changing weather, known as global warming and climate change, is a threat resulting mainly from excessive petroleum use. The burning of fossil fuels emits carbon dioxide and other chemicals into the atmosphere, threatening both human health and that of the ecosystems. At the same time, oil spills have caused devastating impacts on ecosystems. On April 20th, 2010, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, also known as the BP oil spill, occurred. This accidental spill is the largest marine oil spill in world history. On top of the contamination to the Gulf of Mexico, 11 people went missing and 8,332 marine species were affected. At the same time, petroleum has a major social impact on the world. Approximately 48% of the United States petroleum consumption was a result of transportation. As a matter of fact, the United States alone amounts for about 44% of the world's gasoline consumption. Without petroleum, the majority of the United States cars, motorcycles, buses, and trucks would need to find new energy means to operate. Petroleum has caused both an unfavorable and beneficial effect on the United States economy. As stated previously, during the 1970s, the United States fought through a recession due to the intentional shortage by some OPEC nations. Nonetheless, the United States has also benefited from petroleum discovery, which has created entirely new job fields. There are 3 fields specifically related to petroleum, known as drilling, extraction, and support. From 2007 to 2012, the industry saw a 40% increase in jobs, equating to more than 1 million jobs. Total wages also doubled over this period. Although there are both pros and cons to petroleum use, the world should start depending on energy sources that are not expendable and that will not have devastating environmental impacts on the world. Thank you.